Welcome to the Young Turks Thursday show here. We've got another panel for you, a week of panels. John, Ben, Anna here for the first hour.
What is this called?
The second hour.
What is this
What
called?
is this called?
It's called the Banana Pie Hour.
Right. It is. We do need to get an intro at some point. I don't normally like that nickname, except in the context of this trio. I don't mind it as much.
It's amazing how quickly that nickname really stuck with you.
Why?
Yeah.
Why don't you? What's wrong with it? I mean, just embrace it. It's a good nickname.
So here's the thing. My diet is horrendous. I eat all sorts of bad stuff. Pie is like number 75 on the list of bad
That's
things
your
that I
number
eat.
one mistake.
It's inaccurate.
Who gives a shit what you eat?
I don't know.
That's not where it comes from.
I don't know where it comes from.
They
because
started
it's based
calling
on
him
strudel.
Johnny Pie after he brought cheese Danish to work
yes.
or
Your
something.
name is Johnny I.
It is.
Right.
It is.
And The Sopranos had Johnny Hotcakes.
That's true.
And
I am Italian.
And you brought pie. Mm-hmm. And so it was funny. Johnny Pie, it's so obvious. Who gives it? Nobody gives a shit. You could eat soup every day for the rest of your life. You're not going to be Johnny Soup.
Well, I'm from the Northeast, so I'd be Johnny Chowder, if anything. But thank you. I accept it now. I've been berated into
Well,
accepting
I know. Let's keep it real. We know why you didn't like it, and I think you should stand by it. It's because it had a little bit of a second meaning to it through an email string that was going through the office, and that's what you don't like about it. And
What
that
was
makes
the
sense.
second meaning?
There was something about someone that had a pie. Who's going to eat my pie? All that happened, and then it got stuck with him there.
I don't want to
So that's the reason why.
Under the bus.
Pie.
Yeah.
No, nobody's eating my pie. I
Please.
eat the pie. That's why I'm Johnny Pie.
He's not fine. He doesn't like it. Forget it. He's not Johnny Pie. He's Johnny Bisque.
I appreciate a good bisque.
Johnny Bisque.
Anyway, as it turns out, we don't just have discussion over my nickname to talk about today. We also have political news. And so we're going to turn to that. We can get back to the nickname after our first break. But let's talk about Eric Holder. Attorney General Eric Holder announced to employees at the Department of Justice earlier today that he would be resigning after a number of years as the first ever African-American Attorney General in U.S. history. A little bit later on today, both he and President Obama gave some of the reasons for why he left, what they thought his legacy would be, etc. Let's watch some of that.
And over the summer, he came to me and he said he thought 6 years was a pretty good run. I imagine his family agrees. And I know Brooke and Maya and Buddy are excited to get their dad back for a while. So this is bittersweet. But with his typical dedication, Eric has agreed to stay on as Attorney General until I nominate a successor. And that successor is confirmed by the Senate.
So, as they alluded to there will be a successor. There's no one chosen yet. The president is at least implying that he hasn't decided. Of course, we don't know if that's true, but he will be, Eric Holder will be staying on until at least the end of the year. He had some good words for him there, the president did. Also, Senator Patrick Leahy put out a statement about Eric Holder
The chairman
leaving.
of the judiciary.
Exactly, yeah, probably a good point. Attorney General Holder has been an extraordinary leader of the Department of Justice and is to be congratulated for his service. Under his leadership, the department has had remarkable success in convicting terrorists and disrupting threats to national security, while upholding the department's mission of keeping our communities safe from crime and fighting fraud. So, of course, he served for 6 years.
Fourth longest serving Attorney General in American history.
Mm-hmm. And he's known for, I guess, from the right's point of view, controversial positions on a number of different areas.
He is not controversial.
No, not from our point of view. I mean, the fact that he would no longer, they would no longer adjudicate cases involving DOMA, backing off slightly, at least on enforcing some of the federal marijuana laws. Obviously, very strong support for the Voting Rights Act. Now, he did uphold sort of the judicial framework that we've been using for over a decade in terms of prosecuting the war on terror. So it's a mixed bag in some areas, but of course he's going to do that.
Look, yeah, first of all, Obama sounds like an Obama impersonator now. Like, it sounds like a Saturday Night Live skit impersonating with the incredibly halted English, you know, and the cadence and the, you know, but I'm sure Buddy and Maya and Clifton be glad to have their dad back.
There's a little bit of Bush in there.
Totally wanted to do. I think he's doing a little bit of Bush. I think that this is given the circumstances that we live in, like, you want to be a radical progressive here, which of course I am sometimes, but you can be and find fault with the things that we didn't do. And you mentioned, most importantly, continuing essentially what we started on September 12, 2001 about the manner in which we prosecute the war on terror. But this was a guy who attempted to try the September 11th suspects in civilian court, which was, of course, the right thing to do.
Yeah, but it's portrayed as a crazy move for us to make,
and
that
it became
endanger all of America.
So that didn't work out, but that became a politically unfeasible option. Now, could they have fought it longer? I guess, but there would have been significant cost to pay at that point. It's unpopular. It's crazy that it's unpopular. What are we afraid of? What the frick difference does it make? They're going to get convicted, right? Everybody knows it. There's no danger. We should believe in our system, and he was correct on that. Again, refusing to defend DOMA, as you mentioned, that was a big deal, a very big deal at that point. Suing North Carolina and Texas over voting restrictions, investigating police departments for abuse, playing a significant role, in Ferguson, in calming the situation down in Ferguson, and not by saying, everybody go home, you're radicals, but by saying, I hear you, this is serious, and we're going to investigate it. I'm on your side. I get what's happening here. And then it took a long time, and the first 4 years of the Obama administration contradicted what the Obama campaign said in 2008. But look, Washington and Colorado did it, and finally they were like, yeah, we're going to leave it alone. And now, as I know you're going to get to, he is saying, as on his way out the door, essentially words to the effect of, we have marijuana figured all wrong. And the federal government has it figured all wrong. But asking one attorney general to unwind 40 years of policy was tough. So overall, for Eric Holder, like A-, maybe a B+ because no real effort to sort of stop the madness of leaving guys hung out to dry without trial for as long as they did.
But possibly behind the scenes. I mean, we don't know what conversations he had with the president.
I feel like he was probably the guy on the right side even on those conversations. And he may have lost them, but my guess is that he sides with some degree of normalcy. Although he is a bit of a Black Panther, as Fox pointed out.
Exactly, and we will get to those charges.
I really don't have any strong feelings about this story. It was more of a, oh, okay. But what I want to know is why he's resigning. I mean, he hasn't really given an answer. Has anyone heard any speculation or have any speculation of their own?
It's been 6 years.
There's fun speculation. He's the fourth longest serving attorney general there is. There's only two other members of the Obama cabinet who've been there the whole time. Also, Tom Vilsack and the person I'm forgetting. And in addition to
one. Huh? You beat me by one.
Who was the other one? Damn it. Look, people don't generally stay that long. And say, Hillary Clinton left, and she didn't leave because she hated Obama. These jobs are hard, and they're backbreaking, and you can make a ton of money not having them. And the last 2 years of a presidency can be filled with, look, he got held in contempt of Congress for nothing. I imagine, you got some of this you have to think personally. Do I want to spend the next 2 years testifying before Darrell Issa?
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
It's not
He's
really.
weathered quite a bit of criticism and controversy so far. I think he paid his dues.
Yeah,
his family has had to stand by him through this entire thing. At some point, he wants to leave.
There's always a possibility of health issues that he may want to address full time. I don't know, but that they wouldn't talk about. And then there's the fun possibility that if there is a Supreme Court nomination, then that he would be a candidate for it. He'd be a great Supreme Court justice. I'd love to have him on the court, but of course, he didn't have to quit being Attorney General to be nominated for the Supreme Court.
Yeah, especially when there's no current indication that anyone will be leaving, and the person that's most likely, I suppose, barring some health catastrophe, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, indicating in an interview earlier this week that she would not be leaving.
And interestingly, not leaving for and mentioning the very reason that people want her to leave, which was that if she leaves, it would give Obama an opportunity to appoint somebody else. And she's saying, "Hey, look, I read the papers, I watch the news. He's not getting anybody through. It's not going to happen." I don't know that she's right.
I don't agree with her there.
Well,
I wish they had more time to talk about it. I think that she makes some sense, but then you look a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, it's not going to get better, or it certainly doesn't look like it's going to get better. So if this is a reason to not leave now, it's a worse and worse reason with every passing month.
Yeah, it's a lifetime appointment. She gets to stay as long as she wants, though. That's the rule.
That's true.
That's the rule.
Yeah. Overall, I guess I'm sad to see him go, just because I don't feel like at this point in his presidency, Barack Obama is surrounded by many strong progressives. And I feel like, at least on most issues, or the majority of issues, he is a force for good in that regard in the administration, and I don't know how much influence he has over the president. But
I think
with
him
lot. Leaving,
I think a lot.
Well, then it's even worse that he's leaving. I don't know who's going to replace him. I guess there's the possibility it will be someone more progressive, unless Obama switches into campaign mode really fast. I don't know that I see that happening. So overall, I think, look, his record is going to be seen, I think, in decades in the future as somewhat mixed, just because of elements out of his control. Like, he was strong in pushing for increased voting rights and things like that. Well, unfortunately, the Supreme Court decided to tear apart the Voting Rights Act, get rid of some parts of it. obviously nothing he can do about in regard to that, and he is trying to reinstate those in other ways. But that is a loss under his watch, I suppose.
Real quick, couple other things just before we move into some of the nonsense criticism of him, and it is nonsense. Lobbying Congress to reduce prison sentences for nonviolent drug crimes. He's on the right side of that. That matters. Just this week sent a memo yesterday to U.S. attorneys telling them not to use sentencing enhancements known as 851 tools to gain leverage in plea negotiations. So you can't no longer in federal sentences threaten these guys with, hey, I'm telling you, plead guilty, get 10 years. You go try, you get 40.
Yeah.
40. They're like, don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Do your negotiations in good faith. Long-awaited racial profiling guidelines for federal agents will be released soon. Reading from NPR here, those guidelines will make sexual orientation, ethnicity, religion not legitimate bases for law enforcement suspicion. He's he's on the right side of a lot of issues.
He came out strong against SB 1070 in Arizona when we needed someone in the administration to do so.
Look, the manner in which we handle people in the war on terror is going to be, I think, a blight that the Bush and Obama administrations will bear together, and he's part of that. And that's what keeps him from getting an A.
Yeah. Now, so Ben alluded to his recent interview with Yahoo News, where he talked about we've known for a long time that he feels that the way that we prosecute the war on drugs in regards to marijuana has no real rational basis. And so here's a section from that interview. He said, "I think it's certainly a question that we need to ask ourselves whether or not marijuana is as serious a drug as is heroin. The question of whether or not they should be in the same category is something that I think we need to ask ourselves and use science as the basis for making that determination." Now, just give a bit of background in terms of the different schedules of drugs, and it makes it so clear how ridiculous the current setup is. The DEA says Schedule 1 substances, such as heroin and marijuana, are considered the most dangerous class of drugs with a high potential for abuse and potentially severe psychological and/or physical dependence. Schedule 2 substances, such as cocaine and meth, are considered less dangerous, defined as drugs with a high potential for abuse, less abuse potential than Schedule 1 drugs, with use potentially leading to severe psychological or physical dependence.
So Schedule...
Meth, less dangerous.
It's amazing. So Schedule 1, high potential for abuse, and also no medicinal value recognized. So where's alcohol on that list? Is alcohol anywhere
Much
on there?
less dangerous.
It's not on the list at all. And so that first quote you read, whether or not marijuana is as serious a drug as heroin, that seems like a crazy thing to say. He's saying it in the context because they're both on Schedule 1.
Exactly, yes.
Right, ahead of what he is clearly saying is, okay, it's not.
Yeah.
And it's time that we recognize that. And you mentioned, cocaine, meth, oxycodone, Adderall, Ritalin, Vicodin, those are all Schedule 2. Schedule 3 includes anabolic steroids, right? Marijuana is 2 classes away from that. Schedule 4 is Ambien. I have had some batshit stuff crazy happen to me on Ambien, and it's Schedule 4, and marijuana is Schedule 1. It's nuts, and he knows that. But part of the issue, and of course, the one reason that there's no medical value in Schedule 1 is because in Schedule 1 you can't do medical research on it.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And
look, some of those drugs on like Schedule 2, Schedule 3, they get a bad rap and they sound dangerous, but have you ever heard about anyone getting addicted to meth? Anyway,
by the way,
it's ridiculous. It needs to be fixed. He wasn't able to fix it during his time as AG, but I think that it could be coming up in the next few years.
Yeah, I think we're headed in the right direction when it comes to marijuana, especially when you have 2 states that have legalized it for recreational use. Alaska is, about to vote on recreational marijuana, whether or not they should legalize it. We're headed toward the right direction. We just got to keep fighting.
And if Alaska doesn't legalize it, then fuck it, I quit.
Took me a second. I get where you're going.
God bless Charlo. And by the way, just so you don't think everybody is totally crazy, even in 1970, everybody knew that heroin was more addictive and a better danger for abuse than marijuana. The thought about marijuana at the time was what it did to you. That it would make you, Vox pointed this out, that it would make you lazy, crazy, and violent. And
it makes you lazy
and loose,
lazy and violent.
Right? That it would make you want to have sex and beat people up.
Yeah. I love the idea of lazy violence. Like you are laying around on your couch all day long, but if anyone comes within arm's reach of you, you lash out like a panther.
You're going to beat the shit out of them. So it was the moralizing of the late '60s and a reaction to the drug culture of like, oh my God, marijuana needs to be included in that. And to many people, to many parents, and it was all parents writing this, they thought this is the most dangerous thing because marijuana is where I lost my kid.
Yeah.
I didn't lose my kid to heroin, I lost him to marijuana.
Yeah.
It's wrong, but just to give you some context of how it found itself there. What's crazy is that, okay, it found itself there incorrectly because of some paranoia of the times. We've had 44 years. You would think that at some point we correct it, but then the war on drugs came, and it was a notion that if you take it off, you're soft on the war on drugs, and politically that became an untenable position.
Any politician who votes on whether or not to legalize marijuana for recreational use should be in a controlled environment and then forced to smoke marijuana, so they can make an informed opinion.
By the way, greatest show ever, like politicians on weed. Like that's the weed diet. In fact, I'm going to stop talking about it because one of you fuckers will steal it.
There's nothing better than watching a bunch of politicians sleeping and eating Doritos.
Totally, yeah.
AKA our current Congress doing absolutely
I was
nothing.
going to say, AKA the Young Turks newsroom.
Back up. Okay, so we were talking about some crazy there. Let's talk about a little bit more crazy. Eric Holder has stepped down as Attorney General of the United States, and many on the right are very happy to see him go. We've got a number of tweets from politicians. We're going to start off with the media. First here, Andrea Tantaros. Listen to what she says about the first ever African-American Attorney General.
I think really he was Obama's cover-up guy. I mean, he was one of the most divisive, polarizing, controversial, most dangerous men in America, unethical. He didn't enforce the laws on Obamacare. He was droning terrorists without a trial while he was giving them trials in downtown Manhattan. He ran the DOJ much like the Black Panthers would. That is a fact.
That is a fact. You just have to say it. You don't have to provide any evidence for it.
He was the Black Panthers thing, she's a racist. Andrea, you're a racist. You don't even know that you are. But you believe
because
me,
you're young, you
weren't
think that
calling,
you couldn't be.
You weren't going to call Janet Reno running the Justice Department like it's the Black Panthers or like a Black Panther. She said droning terrorists without trial while giving them trials in downtown Manhattan.
What?
Yeah.
Which incredibly dumb, ignorant point would you like to make? But you can't make them both. They contradict each other.
Did you know that he was the one pressing the button to release the bombs from our drones, the Attorney General?
Yeah,
who had absolutely
people,
nothing to do with any of it?
Yeah,
he supported some of it legally and philosophically, and we're against him for that. But that wasn't really his call. And you seem to not mind it at all previous to the Obama administration.
Yeah, and which one do you want? You want him to have trials, or you want us to kill him without a trial?
I think I know which she wants.
I think we know which, exactly, yeah.
Look, I don't agree with their hatred toward Eric Holder at all, but at the same time, I'm really surprised that in that little rant, out of anything that she could have picked on, she didn't talk about Fast and Furious.
She'll get to it.
Yeah,
she will.
They get
that
to
is
it,
a good point, but I mean, she will.
Did she talk about it, JR? No.
But Fast and Furious obviously
can't. Do a little bit of research. You'll find something that you can actually.
It's not real. It's not real. It's made up. It's Benghazi. It's the same thing. It was always Benghazi. I mean, nothing is Benghazi. They're both nothing. There is a real scandal for Eric Holder, which we, by the way, and I regret not mentioning it because I took him down to an A or B plus, and I'm now going to knock him down to a B. So we have to add this to the other clip. The spying and threatening journalists. That's a scandal and an outrage, and he is responsible for that.
She's not worried about that part.
They're not worried about that, and that's something that I regret not mentioning in these first 10 minutes. That's a serious breach. I think he's troubled by it, it seems to me, but they still did it, and it's still wrong.
Yeah, but as she said, most dangerous man in America, more dangerous than the tens of thousands of ISIS terrorists who've come up through the southern border that they believe exist anyway.
Amazing.
Very dangerous, ran it like the Black Panthers, doesn't have to back up any of that stuff. And by the way, if you run a news network and a guest comes on and says stuff as crazy as that, you wouldn't have them back on, and yet she is on multiple
programs.
programs.
That's a fact, she said. He ran it like a Black Panther.
Please put a fact to look into all of that. Next up, we have former VJ Kennedy. Let's see what she had to say.
Holder is, I think he's slimier than a salamander covered in Vaseline.
Wow, that's really slimy.
Thanks.
And that's a fact. Slimier than a salamander. I've touched him, I know.
Slimier than a salamander covered in Vaseline. Professional comedian, Kennedy.
Exactly. And by the way, to go back to Tantaros, I mean, talking about how he's the most...
I wanted to fuck her for a long time, and I didn't know she was crazy.
And that has affected you.
Or Kennedy?
Kennedy.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, like she was smart and had the glasses, and she was, she had glasses before glasses were cool. And I don't know. And I was like super into her.
She had one name before that was cool.
I was super into her.
Yeah.
I thought she was great. And this is incredibly.
So now, if you were given the opportunity and you were single, you would not fuck her.
Not in a million years.
Okay,
well, perhaps someday we'll be able to test that. In the meantime, though, to go back to Tantaros, I mean, talking about Holder as one of the most divisive figures.
She said divisive, and she deserves credit for that.
Okay, fine, divisive. That's fine. Look, whenever there were the worst sorts of racial problems, racial strife in America, Eric Holder was the man that would go and would calm it down. When cops were cracking skulls and shooting people, killing people in the streets, he was the one who would go and would calm down the situation and try to get things back to a level of normalcy. Something that she could never imagine being able to do, that none of the politicians she supports would even be interested in do, let alone capable of doing. He was the one who could do it, and he gets called divisive.
Yeah, no.
But in any event, next up, Jonah Goldberg of the National Review. Let's see what Jonah has to say.
The reason he stayed in longer than a lot of others is I believe, is because he's been basically a political fixer, a firewall for the President of the United States, a stonewaller. And he serves much the way Bobby Kennedy did for JFK as in many ways, a politicized attorney general / hatchet man for the president.
If there's any bit of him that is politicized, it's because they refuse to take anything that he does and not turn it into a political scandal or controversy.
Yeah, and let me say something else here. Bobby Kennedy, greatest attorney general in history of the United States of America. Thank you, is what Eric Holder should say for compare. By the way, 2 calls made by the president. They wanted to people first to let know that Eric Holder was resigning. John Lewis, civil rights hero, John Lewis, representative from Georgia, Ethel Kennedy. So Jonah Goldberg, bring it on. Bring it on. Bobby Kennedy, you know what? And he did protect the president because he was his brother.
Seems biased.
And then, by the way, plagued for the rest of his 5 years of life that he was unable to ultimately protect the president because he thought some of his behavior may have contributed to the assassination of his brother. Remember, his brother was murdered before you start picking on the Kennedys. Murdered. Yeah. And then he was murdered. So I love that he said that. I love that he said that because in the brief time, 1961 to into 1964, that Bobby Kennedy served as Attorney General, first under his brother and then under Lyndon Johnson, more done for civil rights than we ever, at least the motion set in to do more for civil rights. President Johnson deserves a great deal of credit for what was done in civil rights. So the
comparison is apt, at least in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, a great Attorney General Bobby Kennedy was, and Eric Holder would be thrilled to hear what Jonah Goldberg had to say.
Yeah. So those are the goofballs in the media. Quickly, let's go through some of the politicians, their reactions, very classy reactions. Representative Jeff Duncan, good riddance, Eric Holder. Your disregard for the Constitution of the United States will not be missed. We would instead like to implant one of our own attorney generals who will have a different disregard for the Constitution.
What do they think the disregard for? What is their disregard for the Constitution? I love it how, by the way, Andrea Tantaros, and her failure to enforce parts of Obamacare. Like you tried to beat Obamacare. And no one challenges her on that.
Yeah.
You hate Obamacare. You tried to beat it, and then when they didn't enforce parts of it, you should call that a victory.
Yeah.
Secretly, they might. Representative Andy Harris, Eric Holder's resignation is long overdue. Well, you've got it. You can relax now. And then David Vitter. David Vitter. Anyone sad to see Eric Holder stepping down as AG? Not me. I can't think of any AG in history who's attacked Louisiana more than Holder.
Is David Vitter allowed to pass judgment on anyone?
No.
How about he shut his fucking mouth?
That's a nice point about David Vitter. Let's see some other. We have any other headlines about David Vitter? Because David Vitter, he's been in the headlines over the years. There's a CBS News headline. Ex-prostitute says she had sex with Vitter. Politico, New Orleans prostitute dishes on Vitter. Well, there you go. That's David Vitter.
2 of perhaps 100 similar headlines we could run.
Just in case you forget who David Vitter is.
Yeah. And then Lindsey Graham, on the other hand, I appreciate AG Holder's service to our country, even though we had strong disagreements at times. I wish him well in future endeavors.
All right, well, that's
classy from Lindsey Graham.
That's a fine tweet.
Yeah, of course. Look, the people in the opposing party get to criticize him. Like, we understand that. That's nothing wrong. But it's not nuts. And Andy Harris, you don't need to remind us that you're a fucking doctor.
Andy in there, you didn't like that?
Representative Andy Harris, MD.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, there's a bit over the top. So Eric Holder, it's sad to see him go, I think, from our point of view.
If I'm not mistaken, Andy Harris, he's from Maryland, and he won a race against a conservative Democrat named Frank Cradaville, who played for Queen Anne. I played for Georgetown Day School in basketball. They were our arch rival. And Frank Cradaville used to, he was like maybe 5'3" in high school. He was good. He was a ball handler. and I'd guard Frankie Cradaville, and I was essentially unable to. He was too quick for me. But he would also, when you shot a jumper, he would, because he couldn't block your shot, so he would run at your legs. He would lower himself and look like he was going to undercut you, which I always thought was like a kind of a, you know, it was like a low blow. It was a classless play, I thought then. Now I do it.
No, that's genius.
Right, totally. Like a guy who's just a jumper, I'm like, oh, I can't block it. I'm gonna. He never did it. He never touched your legs. He didn't create any problem at all. But you'd for a moment, you'd be like,
oh, so smart.
Yeah, God bless. And so I hope Frank Cradaville at some point comes back and beats Andy Harris.
Wait, how did this story come up again?
Because that one of the guys who tweeted something dumb was Andy
it was
Harris
a great story.
Right.
Okay, we've got another great story for you, though. We're going to turn our eyes to the Middle East. The Prime Minister of Iraq announced earlier today that the intelligence component of his government had uncovered a plot to allegedly attack U.S. and French subway systems. We've got some information about how that was supposed to go down. It's from Haider al-Abadi, as I said, the Prime Minister of Iraq. Today, while I'm here, I'm receiving accurate reports from Baghdad that there were arrests of a few elements and there were networks from inside Iraq to have attacks on metros of Paris and U.S. They are not Iraqis. Some of them are French, some of them are Americans, but they are in Iraq. So very few details coming out so far of the alleged plot. They said they've arrested some people. When asked if they had actually, if they had stopped the plot, he said no. He didn't seem incredibly sure about whether or not it was imminent either. And
he
for
said
many
that
of us,
it was not imminent.
But apparently at another point in the interview he had said that it was imminent. And that's how it's being pitched.
Easy for the president of Iraq
so
to say a subway attack in New York or Paris is not imminent. It's like, I don't know, I'm not there, I don't care. Although, ironically, he is in New York.
Yeah. Now, at that time when he gave this statement. Now, of course, many of us here who are watching the initial stages of our campaign against ISIS moving from Iraq into Syria are naturally suspicious about anything that seems to justify the military action, anything about alleged plots that are imminent that would justify the attack. We are suspicious about them. And so, of course, in response to this, we're wondering, is the U.S. going to confirm this, perhaps use this to ramp up the attacks? At this point, it doesn't seem to be the case. National Security Council spokeswoman Caitlin Hayden said, "We have not confirmed such a plot and would have to review any information from our Iraqi partners before making further determinations. We take any threats seriously and always work to corroborate information we receive from our partners." A statement was also put out by the NYPD saying, "We are aware of the Iraqi Prime Minister's statements and we are in close contact with the FBI and other federal partners as we assess this particular threat stream. New York City normally operates at a heightened level of security and we adjust that posture daily based on our evaluation of information as we receive it."
Real quick, just a few minutes ago, Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York, I have a simple message, he said, for New Yorkers. There is no immediate credible threat to our subway system. I say that with confidence. People should go about their business as they normally would. And also the State Department saying we don't have anything to back it up at this point. We'll keep looking at it. So this is why this is another example, just again, this is a theme I've been hitting this week. I hit it yesterday on Old School. Jimmy and I had a spirited conversation, Jimmy Dore and I. There is a difference. For all the similarities, annoying as they are, frustrating as they are, the fact that there are no progressives anywhere making decisions, but there is a difference. And it is inconceivable to me that John Ashcroft and that ilk would not have been like, "Terror level 5, we're at 5, we're at 5.
We're going to purple."
They wouldn't care. They'd be like, "Hey, he said it. He must know. He's there. He's right." He got called from King Baghdad. Called him on the phone. Got a call from Baghdad. This is serious. And everybody here is like, "Hey, I don't know. I don't know. This doesn't sound right. This sounds like the Iraqi Prime Minister trying to sound important." It may well be serious, but right now we don't know, and it's okay to wait a day and find out if it is serious.
This is a rare case where you don't see an overreaction by U.S. officials to this type of news, especially given how desperately they want the narrative to make it seem as though we are facing an imminent threat, right? I mean, that's the reason why we're doing these airstrikes, isn't it? I mean, they don't say it outright, but they imply that we're in some sort of danger, and that's the reason why we have to launch these airstrikes. But it's interesting that they're not using what the Prime Minister of Iraq has said here for their own narrative. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But nonetheless, we continue on with the airstrikes.
Because I don't think, because I think they think, because there's a possibility that progressives need to be aware of that they really want the airstrikes to be limited and give it time to build up people there to fight them back and do damage of them, to slow them down, to allow a coalition to build, and to give people an alternative. Because right now, I mean, the overwhelming, the cacophony of we don't know what he's talking about is overwhelming, just from what John read. And then I mentioned the mayor and the State Department. The FBI director, James Comey, says, he haven't heard of the plot. He's the director of the FBI. We now, then one senior administration official saying that no one in the U.S. government is aware of such a plot, and it was not raised with us at our meeting with Iraqi officials. Do we know what the Iraqi prime minister is talking about, said the official? No.
Yeah, now, if they had talked about the plot on an American phone or an American email, they would certainly know about it at this point, but they don't have as much information about what's going on in Iraq. So back to the airstrikes really fast. At this point, I don't know exactly what to think in response to them. It does seem like this would have been something that the American government would have jumped on. I mean, they talked about Khorasan. They were going to attack us imminently. That group now seems like it's been at least thoroughly disrupted. The leader might have been killed. I haven't seen an update on that. And so it seems like they would jump on this. And so my initial instinct was to think that the Iraqi prime minister was trying to lay the foundation for an expansion of the conflict. And yet his government has come out multiple times and said he does not want the U.S. to re-engage in Iraq. He wants to take control of that situation. And so it's a confusing situation. It might be that they've just received misinformation and he was passing it on. It certainly seems plausible. ISIS has made clear that their two principal international enemies at this point are the U.S. and France. They've used quite derogatory language about the French in the recent past. And so I'm watching the airstrikes as well. And whenever you talk about airstrikes, and someone on the right in particular wants to take this to beyond airstrikes, into a ground invasion, they'll always say airstrikes are known to have never been successful in taking out a group like this. But we do have to remember the possibility that this group is not like other groups. This is not just a terrorist organization that's holed up in one apartment and that can easily move in response to the airstrikes. This is a quasi-governmental organization that is trying to take and hold territory. They're trying to set up police stations and government buildings and things like that. And so there is at least the possibility that airstrikes will be more successful against ISIS than against other more traditional terrorist organizations.
Did you see that they were able to set up a Sharia court in Mosul? Yesterday, the story does not end well. They tried and executed Samira Salih al-Nuyami, I'm sorry to mispronounce her name, who is an Iraqi human rights lawyer, and they went and got her out of her house 5 days ago at home outside of Mosul with her. She was there with her husband, her 3 kids. They tried her in a Sharia court. Oddly enough, they found her guilty of demeaning Islam, and then they executed her because 5 days later they told her family to come to the morgue, and they found her body, and she'd been tortured and she was dead. So, and you read these stories, and this is what, this was just today that this story came out, and I read it, and I get that feeling that I'm sure people in the government have, and then you want them to be restrained, and I think right then, fucking get them. Fucking bomb them. Like, this is a human rights lawyer. This is one of the people in Iraq that we're like, we want these people there in Iraq.
We want everyone to be like that.
This is what we want them to be like, and what we hope that because that'll make life better for us, and it'll obviously make life better for millions and millions of Iraqis. And they went and they get her and they try her in some nonsense made up court, and she's dead.
Yeah, but before we go to break, one random fact. We're not going to talk about these numbers, but we recently saw a newer breakdown of exactly what we spent to arm and train, try to nation build in Iraq. And so you talked about they're trying to set up this court. The U.S. apparently spent $681 million to shore up Iraq's courts. What did that money go towards? How many court buildings and how many judges did you hire with that money? So that was money well spent. Now,
mostly bailiffs.
You think bailiffs? Yeah, you need a lot of them
to keep
control, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, we got to take our first break. When we come back, we have Boobgate for you. That should be a lot of fun, and a number of other great political stories.
No, I'm interested in Boobgate.
I'm always interested. We'll be back shortly.
Who wants to build me a website? Bueller? Bueller? Hello? Anna, baby. Build me a website.
Jake, you're a grown man. You can't figure this out?
I can't. You're welcome, Internet.
Welcome back to the Unfiltered. We were waiting for the bass to drop. We didn't think it was going to happen, and then boom.
We worried it would never happen.
All right, welcome back, you guys. We have great stories ahead for you. Remember to use the hashtag TYT Live to tweet to us. We love reading stuff that you have to say. It's cool. I don't know. I feel like there's something else that I should mention or say before we get started. Anything? Anything?
Member shout-outs?
I will say that we have an interesting and very complex discussion for our members in our post-game today. We're going to talk about bathroom etiquette, specifically whether or not someone should use their smartphone while they're at a urinal. Okay? We talk about really important topics in the post-game show. But, like, look, it starts off that way, and then it snowballs into something that's actually really interesting.
Yeah.
Bitchy gay guy.
Best guy on Twitter. My favorite.
Mike.
I'm on.
Talk amongst yourselves. No, it's Ben.
Anyway. So as Ben hooks his mic up.
Yeah. We could tell people, though, you're not going to be here tomorrow.
Okay, I'm not going to be here tomorrow.
Which is too bad.
Yeah, my brother's getting married, and so I'm going to my sister-in-law's bachelorette party in Vegas. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I thought they were already married.
No, it feels like they should be at this point. Yeah. But
so Anna's going to be out, but we are going to have, in the first hour, it's going to be Ben and I, and we're going to be joined by Jimmy Dore and Brian Unger, so that's going to be fun.
That's
and
good.
I'm going to be so clearly the least funny person in the room. That should be awesome. And then Gina will be taking over and joining them in the second hour.
Awesome.
It's just comedians from wall to wall.
A bitchy gay guy. I like my guns in public places and my gays in the closet. I'm a Republican.
Damn, he's good.
He's good.
Yes.
He's good.
Okay.
Love the Chige guy. All right, let's move on to the stories. A school district in Huntsville, Alabama is monitoring its students much like how the NSA monitors us. And they say that they're doing so because the NSA actually contacted them and said, hey, you know what? Some of your students might actually be a threat, so it might be a good idea to spy on them. Now, the superintendent of this school district is Casey Wardinsky, and he argues that, look, the NSA alerted us, so of course we're going to spy on our students and see what kind of activities they're engaging in off campus during non-school hours, right? So let me tell you exactly what's going on, and this is according to Alabama local news. Huntsville Schools Superintendent Casey Wardinsky says the system began monitoring social media sites 18 months ago after the National Security Agency tipped the school district to a student making violent threats on Facebook. Huntsville schools began scanning Facebook and other sites for signs of gang activity, watching for photos of guns, photos of gang signs, and threats of violence. Now, the really fascinating part about this is, why would the NSA, National Security Agency, focus on gang activity when they're supposed to be focusing on terror activity, counterterrorism? Well, the National Security did release a statement about this particular case, and here's what they had to say. The NSA has no record that it passed any information to Huntsville School District, and the description of what supposedly occurred is inconsistent with NSA's practices. Moreover, NSA does not make recommendations regarding school safety programs. Now, through this type of monitoring, which of course started about 18 months ago, 4 students have been reprimanded in some way, 3 of which have been expelled, and 1 of which has been placed in some sort of alternative program. So what they're doing is they're looking for pictures of teenagers having guns, pictures of guns, and that's enough for them to go after the student and possibly expel them for that type of activity. So, look, the school should not be monitoring what students do when they're not in school or when it's not school hours. When they're doing whatever, posting things on social media, as long as they don't pose an imminent threat to other students in class, then they have no reason to monitor. I don't want anyone monitoring my kids. I don't need it. I think it's excessive. I think that right now we have governmental agencies watching us. Now we have school districts watching us. We have everyone watching us. There's no privacy left. It goes way too far.
But I think because everyone's watching us, it's okay. I do. I mean,
you think one more isn't that
like,
bad?
I don't think it matters, and it's on social media, and I think, John!
I thought that was off. I apologize. It is now off. Sorry.
It was because you didn't turn it on in the bathroom. You should have taken care of that while you were peeing. Look, I think that schools, the school's duty to protect the students extends the entire time that the school is in existence. And so, look, if they were breaking into computers, if they were hacking, it's very different than monitoring social media sites, which strikes me. It doesn't seem like they were, it seems like the story about being alerted by the NSA is horseshit, although the school is saying it started because one of the kids was talking to somebody in Yemen. And that's why the NSA was aware of it in the first place.
I think that part was made up.
I think so,
and
too.
I think that they know that they're doing something wrong because they felt the need to say that the NSA gave them the green light to do this type of monitoring. Now, this isn't the only school district in the country that's doing this type of monitoring. Glendale, California actually does the same thing, and they actually hired like a private contractor, a private company to help them monitor the students. It goes too far. We have some school districts in Texas that have students wear GPS monitoring devices so they can figure out where the students are if they aren't in class. It goes too far. We're not cattle. We don't need to be monitored in that way. It goes too far.
But that's different. I mean, I stand with you on making the students wear GPS devices. That's insane. But for a school district to monitor students, to monitor the social media net, I would do it. You got to protect kids. You have to protect them. And when you're alerted to something, I would, obviously you're going to follow through with that. You're going to let law enforcement know. You're going to let them take over. But I'd almost rather have the school doing it. As long as they're not using any extraordinary measures other than looking at it. I mean, it's social media. It's out there. You can look, and if a kid is if they're looking at it and they're following some Twitter accounts and they say kids on Twitter, if they're not abusing it, the moment they start to abuse it, if they're like, hey, I didn't like what you said about Melissa on Twitter last night, like, leave that alone. You threatened to kill somebody on Twitter, then guess what? We care about that even if you didn't do it at school.
The only examples that they gave the media was pictures of some of the students posing with guns, right? And okay, I mean, it's just interesting to me that in Alabama, of all places, they have such a huge problem with that. Right? Like, just
don't
because,
all of them do that?
Don't get me wrong, I'm not a big lover of guns, but just because a teenager is posing in a picture with a gun, it doesn't mean that they're going to be an imminent threat to any other student.
No, but sorry, go ahead, John.
I have to imagine that the NRA is going to be the biggest supporter in the world for the students because they want all of these kids to be proud of their guns and to go take classes and to shoot and be active in that sort of lifestyle. They should want that. The fact that the school lied about the NSA makes me not trust them. And I'm not totally against the idea of if there had been a lot of violence in the past at the school, going above and beyond. But when you lay the foundation through deception, I think that we've seen far too many cases where principals and things like that are using these sorts of things as excuses to look into the students, not because of national security or gang activity, but because they want to see the kids in their private lives, their perverts, things like that. We've seen a lot more of that than we've seen terrorist plots being foiled by principals looking in on Facebook and Twitter.
I don't know, man. The idea that they could look in and see kids who are threatening suicide or kids that are in some sort of look, and I don't know. I'd be curious whether the other parents on this panel would, and I can't believe I just did that because I don't feel it much differently than I did before I had a kid. But like, I don't have a problem with the school seeing somebody with a gun on his Facebook page and going to talk to that kid.
But in Alabama, isn't that supposed to be part of the culture?
Not for kids. I don't know. I don't care, Alabama or not. I still would. I have no beef. The idea of a school shooting, while no different in the terms of killing a kid than it would be if there's a shooting at a pizzeria that kills a kid, is so traumatic to a community, to the kids. It so challenges the framework of what we believe should happen when a child goes to school, that if I see a picture of a student at a school holding his gun, it does not bother me if the school goes and talks to him. If that act of him holding a gun on his property at home causes them to expel the kid, no, of course not. That's crazy talk.
Well, that's what's happened.
Well, we don't know. Not every time they've seen a kid with a gun, they've expelled anybody. They're not saying that. So if they go into, I don't know, JR and Jesus, is that crazy? Would you guys?
I don't know. I see the point. I just wonder where it begins is the only thing. If you're looking for something else and you run across potentially violent behavior or threatening behavior, I get it. But if it's born out of nothing, then that's a problem.
I think that's my biggest issue. It's born out of nothing, and then also it goes.
Because what else are they finding that they don't like?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, by the way. I think we gave probably the best example for them to make their case, which is them posing with guns. I don't think that just because a school-age student is posing with a gun, it means that they're going to be a threat to the school district or to anyone else, right? But they're also saying that they're investigating students who might be making possible or perceived gang signs with their hands. That's the kind of shit I don't want, right? I did stupid things like that. I thought I was a chola when I was in high school, right? So if you look at some of my chola pictures, you probably thought that I was a bad kid. But behind closed doors, I was like, oh damn, I got to really study up on this college class because I really want to make sure I get 2 years of college down, under my belt before I graduate. Like I was a fucking nerd, right? But looking at pictures, you probably thought I was a skanky little hoe. So you can't look at social media and make judgments about these teenagers. And don't monitor them unless you have a reason to monitor them. Again, it's the whole monitoring people indiscriminately that bothers me.
But the monitoring, as long as we acknowledge that the monitoring, though, is just looking at social media. I could look at it. I could monitor every kid in the Huntsville school system if I wanted to, right? That's who I'd follow on Twitter. I'd have a whole page of Huntsville high school kids. I mean, it'd be weird.
If I saw that, I would feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, totally, of course. I don't know, man.
Just the volleyball team.
I am sympathetic for what they're trying to do, if what they're trying to do is what they say they're trying to do. And I hear you that maybe it isn't.
2-1 though, you lose. So.
Sorry.
What else is new?
We have some good news for you guys today, so let's start off with that. Some cases that ended with some justice, so I like that. Recently, Marlene Pinnock was punched in the face several times by a California Highway Patrol officer by the name of Daniel Andrew. Now, she was reported as walking barefoot on the Interstate 10 West. And when the cop showed up to the scene, he alleges that she was resisting his arrest. She was being very difficult to deal with. And as a result, here's what happened, and this is video that was filmed by someone who was driving by on the 10 freeway. Take a look.
That truck left. Oh my God, he's grab her ass. Oh my God. Stop. And then they say police brutality. Arrest her. Stop. Oh, he is beating her up, yo.
Gosh, why?
Is that a cop? No, he's just holding her down. He can't. I'm watching this.
So the woman in the video suffers from bipolar disorder. She had stopped taking her medication a few months prior to this incident taking place. And as you can see in the video, there was excessive force used. And as a result of that video and an investigation, the woman, Marlene Pinnock, will receive a settlement of $1.5 million. And the CHP's officer in question, Daniel Andrew, has been fired. He has elected to resign.
Good. So that guy has no business being a police officer. That's pretty clear. The other guy, who, if I remember the story correctly from when it happened, the guy who you see running up and holding the woman down, who actually helped in that sense, because at least he stopped punching her in the face, and he could have killed her, was an off-duty police officer who pulled over and saw a police officer engaged in that activity.
Yeah, so we didn't get to cover it earlier today, but DC is considering having cameras on all their police officers, and as we acknowledge, there are some bad parts to that, things where it would interfere with your job. But I have to imagine that police officer would not have done what he did were he wearing the camera. Or if he did, we would have known exactly. Like, thankfully, in this case, somebody driving by happened to have the video. If not for the video, she probably wouldn't have had the $1.5 million.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and. But you know, but anyway, if
he should get a cut.
He'd have said he'd have beaten her up because he clearly has rage issues. He liked it. He liked it. He was in charge.
Punching her in her face.
Punching her in the face.
Even if she was being unruly and difficult to subdue, right? You don't punch her in the face. I'm pretty sure your training goes against that.
Yeah. Cuff her.
Yeah.
Cuff her. Aggressively cuff her. You know, and you know, and as we've seen in a bunch of other cases where cameras were either in jail cells or in police houses when they brought suspects in, they're like, oh no, that video went out. So that guy would have brought the video and it broken his camera. He'd be like, yeah, it broke in the morning. I was broken all day.
What a coincidence.
Sorry. Yeah.
So I do want to give some credit to CHP officials in California, because oftentimes when we talk about these cases of police brutality, local police departments, state troopers, whatever it is, will usually rally in support of the police officer in question. But that is not what happened in this case. CHP Commissioner Joe Farrow did launch the investigation, and that's what eventually led to the settlement and the CHP CHP officer getting fired. And he did release a statement. I want to read it to you. He says, "When this incident occurred, I promised that I would look into it and vowed a swift resolution. Today, we have worked constructively to reach a settlement agreement that is satisfactory to all parties involved." And by the way, the cop could face some criminal charges. According to the Associated Press, Andrew could still be charged criminally in the case. The CHP forwarded the results of its investigation to the incident to the Los Angeles County prosecutors last month, saying he could face serious charges, but none have been filed yet.
Yeah.
Seems like a crime to me. Yeah, but good for Joe Farrow and also, like in that quote that you read, that a settlement agreement satisfactory to both parties. Like, satisfactory to both parties, you just gave up $1.5 million. So if you're satisfied with that, there was nothing about this case that went your way.
Yeah.
Nothing that went the cops' way. And good for that. And we hope that what we didn't see happen in Ohio, was it where the Walmart shooting was? Was that correct? Was that in Ohio? I think so. And then we hope that this is what happens in Ferguson, that investigators take it seriously, at least that the grand jury takes it. How the grand jury looked at that shooting in Ohio and didn't prosecute and didn't file charges is beyond me. But we mentioned Eric Holder in the first hour, and the Justice Department is looking at that case too.
Yep. All right, we have another case of another cop getting fired. South Carolina State Trooper Sean Gruber has been fired after video has been released of his interaction during a routine traffic stop. Now, he pulled over a man by the name of LeVar Edward Jones. Apparently, he wasn't wearing his seatbelt.
Oh, Jesus.
Here's how it all played out.
Can I see your license, please? Get out of the car! Get out of the car! Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
I just got my license. You can't get my license. I grabbed my license right there. That's my license right there.
Put your hands behind your back. 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 Put your hands behind your back.
What did I do, sir?
Are you hit?
I think so. I can't feel my leg. I don't know what happened. I just grabbed my leg.
Rachel on 866, I need a 1052.
Why did you shoot me?
Well, you dove head first back into your car.
I'm sorry.
Then you jumped back out. I'm telling you, get out of your car.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear 2 words, sir.
What a fucked up world. He's saying I'm sorry to the cop
who just shot
He's
him.
Apologizing to an incompetent police officer who just shot him. I'm not a cop. I don't have any friends I have some friends who are cops, but they're not close. But I've watched a lot of cop television shows, and you have him step away from the car. You ask him, you don't. Yeah. He abandoned all police procedure, all training. This incompetent fuck. Okay. And then when the guy just on instinct, like a cop says, get your license, it's like, oh, well, my wallet's right here. I'll go get it. And so he shot him.
Because he's not a criminal. He's just a person responding to the police. Look how polite he was after he was shot.
First of all, I've been pulled over for not wearing my seatbelt. The cop did not have me step out of my vehicle. Okay? Why was he told to step out of his vehicle in the first place? I don't really understand that. And when his reaction to you asking him to show his license is to reach to get his license, you don't shoot. Like,
dove head first.
He didn't dive head first into the car. You're looking at the video. You don't need me to explain it for you. He was shot once in the hip, but you did hear 3 shots fired. And you're right, Ben. I think the most disgusting...
He kept shooting after his hands were up.
He kept shooting at the door. That's great.
This guy is amazing. Yeah. Now, he has been fired, okay? The cop has been fired, so there's a little bit of justice there, but he is facing criminal charges as well. He was charged with assault and battery of a high and aggravated nature, a felony which carries a penalty of up to 20 years behind bars.
Could be charged with attempted murder.
Yeah, look, I've never shot anyone, so maybe I don't understand how you respond, but he obviously thought the guy had a weapon or something, so he shoots at him. The guy falls away, has no weapon. If that guy had any understanding of what he did or remorse, there's nothing in that video to make you think that exists. He just shot the guy, knows that what he did was completely and utterly wrong, doesn't seem to care whatsoever. He's still talking to the guy as if he's a criminal, and that guy did something wrong. The one who's on the ground because he was shot.
He did ask if he was hit, and then he did call the ambulance. But whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter if he was super kind and polite afterwards. Like, I think
no, but he has no humanity in that video.
I don't know. I thought he was okay after he shot him, but who gives a shit? You shot him. I don't care.
My perception of that was that he couldn't wait to shoot at him. Right? He knew that he was reaching into his car to get the license.
Anna, these guys, look, these guys live in terror. It's their job, but they live, I'm sure, like, that's why he didn't follow procedure. That's why you never let someone reach back into their car. That's what cops are trained to do. So if the guy's out of the car and you say, "Where's your license?" First thing you say is, "Step away from the vehicle, step away from the vehicle." You put him on the ground, you put the hand, and then you say...
But he had no reason to think that the guy was dangerous anyway. He stopped him for not wearing a seatbelt.
That doesn't matter, though. But once you've got him, and you can't let a guy reach back into a car. But that's your fault.
I think you're both right.
It's the guy's fault. You can't let him, it's the cop's fault. You can't let him reach back into the car. And once you let him reach back in the car, he panicked.
Yeah. He shouldn't have had to step out of the vehicle in the first place for something like a seatbelt violation.
We don't know why do we know why he was out of the vehicle?
No, we don't know why he was out.
So he may have stepped out of the vehicle himself. Get out of the car, get out of the car, and then you didn't let him get out of the car.
Look.
Can we watch it again from the beginning with the audio up, please? Sorry, I just want to watch it one more time with the audio up from the beginning.
Can I see your license, please? Get out of the car! Get out of the car! Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
See,
I just got my license. You think you're my license? I got my license right there. That's my license right there.
Put your hands behind your back. 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 Put your hands behind your back.
What did I do, sir?
Are you hit?
I think so. I can't feel my leg. I don't know what happened. I just grabbed my leg.
Rachel on 866. I need a 1052.
Why did you shoot me?
Well, you dove head first back into your car.
I'm sorry.
Then you jump back out until you get out of your car.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear 2 words.
All right, so I misinterpreted the very beginning of it. I'm glad we watched it again. I thought the cop asked him to step out of his car. It turns out he stepped out on his own. So that changes it a little bit. But nonetheless, the way the cop handled it wasn't right.
Yeah, look, the thing is, if that had been Anna, and she reached in, he would not have started firing. If it was an old white man, he would not have started firing. I totally understand that they live in a state of terror, but for whether he considers himself a racist or not, subconsciously he is primed to be terrified of a person who looks like that,
John,
and that's why he responded the way he did.
I agree with you completely. You and I we would have gotten yelled at.
Yeah.
You and I would have gotten scolded. Step away from the car!
Or at most, I would have been shot at once because of my hair. That's it. That's the extent of it.
Yeah, man, it's bad. It's bad. And the good thing is that they have South Carolina, the state police, the state troopers have acted quickly, and they got rid of him. And he's facing he's facing some serious charges. He had to post $75,000 bond. What an incompetent idiot, man! You get who are they hiring? It's incredibly basic. Again, you learn it on television. And then when you don't do it, you don't get to be like, "Oh, I fucked up step 1, so I'll just jump to step 9."
You don't get one shot
and
free.
Shoot 3. That guy's. It's amazing that guy's not dead.
2 things.
Yeah.
So first of all, if there was no video here, it'd be he dove back in the car reaching for a weapon that I thought I saw.
Right.
So that happens all the time.
Right.
Yeah. I thought I saw a weapon. He dove. He said it on video. You dove back in the car when he didn't dive back in the car. And he really thinks he dove back in the car because he's a scared bitch. So after that happens, the story becomes whatever they want it to be. And I remember when Bill O'Reilly was talking about this, and he said the number of police killings of citizens is so minuscule compared to the arrests. And the ones, wrongful shootings, and of the ones that were rightful were things that happened because they, did things wrong. The person who was pulled over did the wrong thing. How many of these stories were actually just like this, but the story came out, oh, he dove back in the car as soon as I said step away, and he reached for his gun that I thought I saw, but we didn't end up finding anyway because it was never there.
Yeah.
These type of things happen. because they can make their story up. They can't make up their story more. Now the result comes to more of this.
For how many years before Rodney King, and since Rodney King, but if Rodney King is that moment where we finally saw what some cops were capable of, and the only reason anything happened there, I mean, those guys, they did that because, and they see how comfortable they are. There's all these other cops around and they didn't care. They're like, bang, take out a nightstick, take out a flashlight, let's beat the shit out of this unarmed guy who didn't obey our orders to pull over.
Yeah.
And then, so go back to where we're presumably less evolved in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s and the 50s. What did they, how many things went on? How many things went on? And yet we're still trained. I'm still trained. I still read a quote from a police officer who says, well, the guy reached for his gun, and I still instinctively think, well, I guess the guy reached for his gun, because it's still a position of authority.
Totally.
Yeah.
We still do it.
You're raised on that.
Yeah,
and number two,
right.
you know what? Arrest this guy, fire him. Okay, fine, this is one. Now you need to go and completely overhaul and retrain your entire police force on this kind of thing to do. When you see, I looked like the guy was black, I don't even know. When you see a citizen, don't assume that they're dangerous and going to kill you. Mm-hmm. If you have that mindset, send them through a psychological test to see if they're mentally capable of handling a tense and stressful situation. If they can't, this is the wrong job for you. It's just the wrong fucking job. There's enough of the whole, let's get rid of that guy after he killed someone. Let's get rid of the next guy after he killed someone. Let's fix this before it happens over and over again. Address that you have a problem with a certain group of people in this country, and you need to rethink the way you approach it.
I don't know if they're at the forefront of it, but my impression is, and my brother's gone through the training, like, it's really serious in LA now. Mm-hmm. Really serious in LA. And you're put through these reenactments where you are like all these situations, and when you kill a civilian in those situations, or kill a guy who again reaches behind something and then he comes out with his passport,
you lose a lot of points.
Yeah, but I mean, but you do, like, they take it seriously. Like, that's part of the training. And I don't know, and I don't know whether I lived there for 5 years, whether I'm just being sort of in my typical way dismissive of South Carolina, but I bet they don't. I bet they don't. I bet it's not that rigorous. And that guy handled everything wrong from the start, from letting the guy get out of the car, to letting him reach back in, to not, your voice when you're a cop and you yell out the instructions is terrifying.
Yeah.
Get on your, and if his dashboard had said, get on your hands and knees and lock your hands behind your head, like, that would have been wrong, because all the guy did was not have a seatbelt. Mm-hmm. But he wouldn't have been shot. Yeah. And we'd have been able to get through to day 2. Thank God he's okay.
All right, let's take a break. We haven't taken a break yet in this hour, so let's do that. I'm going to read some of your TYT live tweets, and when we come back, Tom Jackson, the police chief in Ferguson, Missouri, has a message for you.
Oh, good.
You liked that, didn't you?
Well, if you like that, you'll love the whole show. TYTnetwork.com. Get the whole show as a member.